everybody. It's Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton here for Talkin' Ball, sponsored by our friend Dr. Brett Robin at Austin Orthopedic Institute each and every Monday night, brought to you by Dr. Brett Robin. Thank you for him, the former Longhorn running back, sponsoring, again, Austin Orthopedic Institute, Dr. Brett Robin. Jerry, some news breaking a little bit today for the Longhorns. Murad Watson, a defensive lineman out of Syracuse, actually he's out of Irvington, New Jersey, was a freshman All-American at Syracuse as a defensive tackle, is expected to visit Texas later today. The Longhorns have already picked up 4 commitments in this transfer portal window. They've also already picked up 4 defensive linemen in the last 3 months or 4 months now in the transfer portal overall, with both the winter and the spring portal. This would make 5. Obviously, though, this is a big-time player, young man, a freshman All-American. Again, Murad Watson, tell us what you know about him and what's going on with his recruitment. Entered the portal officially, I believe, earlier today, and all of a sudden on a visit to Texas almost immediately.
Yeah, I just want to say we're late getting started. That was my fault. I got an important call at like 7:15, so I had to take it. Important call in our business. So sorry about that. And
Jerry put us in a pickle there with that.
I'm not trying to be a tease. It is what it is. Look, Murad Watson has a lot of leverage. I'll say that he's probably the best defensive tackle in the portal. So he's got the leverage. Texas, Miami. There's a number of schools that have reached out or want to take a shot at him. The question is, will he play this thing out? He picked Syracuse over Tennessee, and what at the time was an upset win for Syracuse, but also told you about Elijah Robinson and that staff as recruiters that they beat out Tennessee for Murad Watson. Now, he is out of Irvington, New Jersey, right? So they have a little closer to home field, but they beat out an SEC school for him at Syracuse. So he was seen as an SEC-level player out of high school his senior season. He made it OV to Tennessee. So it's not surprising that he had a really good year in the ACC. And look, Bobby, the question will be, is it going to play out a while, or can Texas potentially get this thing done quick?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. But I got to say this, Jerry, Texas has gotten it done fairly quickly with the other 3 or 4 players they brought in the portal, starting with Emmett Mosley. He was on campus. 2 days later, he commits to the Longhorns. Jack Indries on campus. He commits to the Longhorns 48 hours later. Levon Johnson commits to the Longhorns 12 hours later. Mason Shipley commits and signs the very same day. Steve Sarkisian, Brandon Harris, the Texas personnel staff right now doing yeoman's work, I think, trying to capitalize on, really, I guess the best way to put it is, create a bonanza for themselves, for lack of a better term, with trying to domino on all these players. Watson, though, is the interesting thing here, Jerry, and we talked about it. A lot of people said, oh, well, Texas must be done in the portal at defensive tackle. Not the case after getting Levon Johnson, the potential starter or would-be starter for Maryland in the portal. Texas just went right back after it and is going to continue to try to fill these offensive and defensive lines, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, given they've recruited really well on offense historically.
Yeah, and I would say this is another run stopper, right? He was not a guy that made a lot of tackles behind the line of scrimmage, right? A tackle and a half for loss, 1 sack as a freshman. This is another guy who's really good against the run, plays the run really well, and that is number 1 for Texas in this portal. And while they do need a disruptive 3, I believe, it's still run stop, play the run first, because I think they know they have the pieces at edge and at linebacker, multiple spots at linebacker to create pass rush. But this is a guy who's, again, more of a run stopper early in his career than a disruptor.
All right, I want to say thanks before we go forward. We're going to take y'all's questions. We also have some film we're going to watch of Jaylen Lott. Just a minute, speedster that Dad played at Texas, James Lott. Going to talk about him a little bit. Jerry has an update for us. But first, special thanks to Dr. Brett Robin at Austin Orthopedic Institute for sponsoring On Texas Football. Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and even total joint replacements if needed. With convenient offices in Austin, Georgetown, and Killeen, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000. That's 512-856-1000. Get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love. Again, accepting new patients now, 512-856-1000. Jerry, let's talk a little bit before we get to the questions. Let's talk a little bit about Jaylen Lott. Bruce Springsteen, he was born to run, kind of fitting here, 24-6 or 24-7 in the long jump this past weekend to advance to state. Watch this young man really can run and just looks almost like a gazelle at times with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, so I have a little update here. I think, yes, Josie, you always bully me. Don't be nice. You always bully me because then it's fun when Oregon's down 30-0 in the first quarter of a playoff game. So, look, Jaylen Lott, my update there is I think we're seeing Texas shift to recruit him more as a wide receiver now.
Okay.
I think when he was on campus recently, he sat in on wide receiver meetings, and there was a lot of excitement from Jaylen Lott in the wide receiver meetings, probably more so than DB meetings. So I think early on in this recruitment, it was more cornerback as his highest upside position. But I think we're about to see Texas make a shift here and recruit him as a wide receiver / athlete and wide receiver first. That's where I think this recruitment's about to head for Texas.
Well, he just can run, man. Jeez. I mean, just glides past people. You can see why they would want to try him on either side of the ball, Jerry.
Yes.
I was one of those guys. We watched his hill. Where was he at his sophomore year? Because
he was at Lovejoy.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because he was with the McCutcheon and Livingstone and those other really talented players, and yet he still had just some really, really just speedy film. It kind of looked a little freaky at times.
So what's interesting about this, Bobby, is if they shift to receiver with him, well, that changes your wide receiver board pretty dramatically.
Significantly, yeah.
Because he's your slot and a real speedster out of the slot, right? By the way, Caden Finley was on campus as we broke that news a week or so ago. He was on campus late last week, had a really good visit. Still think we'll see a Texas Notre Dame decision there with Caden Finley, who visits Texas June 20th. Jaylen Lott visits Texas June 13th through 15th. So we shall see. And then, you have Jermaine Bishop out there that's an athlete / corner that he could play on either side of the ball. So we'll have to see where this wide receiver recruiting goes for Texas. But with Jaylen Lott probably shifting the recruiting him as a wide receiver, that now changes your corner board and your wide receiver board.
You mentioned that Chris Stewart also committed, young man out of Pearland down there. He's a speed guy. They could, after going largely out of state the last couple of years, they could be going in-state more at receiver this year.
They could. I mean, it's interesting how it's all playing out. You have Aaron Gregory at Douglasville, Georgia, who he's an A&M commit, but I think that this deal could come down to Texas and Texas A&M. He's scheduled to be on campus June 13th. Caden Dixon-Wyatt, that one, I have never really felt that one really trending to Texas, so we'll see there what happens. But, it could turn more in-state. Boobie Feaster was on campus recently, but he still hasn't set up an official visit. We'll see what happens. The one guy that was on campus in April may be back again this weekend or may not, but he'll be back for June official visits. Jabari Mack out of Destrehan. Texas is all in on Jabari Mack and Aaron Gregory. Tristan Keys. Some people ask about Tristan Keys. I don't see that happening right now.
Okay, that's the wide receiver out of Hattiesburg that's currently committed to LSU.
Yeah, he's
still taking some visits to other places. All right, every Monday night we take your questions till the top of the hour here. Jerry and I typically like to talk a little recruiting action, just get y'all's questions and comments in, but we'll take anything you have. Cormit the Frog Do you see the House settlement and the resurgence of the bag game specifically hurting Texas in recruiting, or is the athletic department, corporate NIL, et cetera, strong enough to overcome that? Hook them. I don't know that if there is a true bag game, then yes, it's going to hurt Texas, because Texas typically and historically has not played that. So if you see under the table payments return, it is not going to help Texas. Over the table payments help Texas clearly. And that's what we've seen the last couple of years. Right, Jerry?
Yeah,
so
look,
if you start pushing it back underneath, I think it hurts a school like Texas that wants to be above board with it.
It helps the in-state schools.
You think it helps the in-state schools? Why is that?
I just think things get taken care of.
Oh, okay.
In the state where people live.
Okay.
I think in-state. I think it helps the schools in their own state in recruiting if the SEC returns to the SEC.
The Alabamas and the Auburns of the world, and the Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
All of them.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know that it'll help Texas, though. I'll just be blunt. The question that you have there is Texas strong enough to overcome that? Historically, they have been. Could be a new day and age. Everything we do nowadays in college football, other than the product we see on the field, is new. So I think that me pretending like I know what's going to happen there would be false advertising. But I think that Texas historically has been able to overcome that if they've had a good team. As long as Texas is putting out a good product on the field, right, recruiting is always taking care of itself to some degree. Now, not necessarily to the degree that Steve Sarkisian's doing it right now and Brandon Harris. That's a different story. I mean, you don't have number one ranked recruiting classes like they just did. All right, next question. King. Okay. King, good. Could we see an offensive package for Jonah Williams? The guys talked a little bit about Jonah earlier today. We talked about him as well after he had a terrific series against Auburn. And now we're kind of waiting with bated breath for him to play a little football. He did have an offensive package at Ball High, Jerry, that was highly successful. But you think more maybe use him as a returner to get his feet wet as opposed to the offensive package? Yeah,
I would say if there's an offensive package for him, that means the receivers are underperforming. That's the one thing I would say there is there's a lot of invest at wide receiver at Texas. So I'd be looking, not having spring football, going from baseball. What if they go to the College World Series? He's missing a lot of time. I don't think they're going to try to put too much on his plate. I could see special teams really early on, and then him getting his feet wet at safety. If they started tinkering around at wide receiver with him, I don't think that's necessarily good for the wide receivers at Texas. That means they've underperformed.
All right. Next, this is a funny one from Cotton. I feel like I should do that ESPN ding ling 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 ling. We have a trade. UT and University of Tennessee, Cotton, and UCLA have swapped quarterbacks to secure their last place finish. Nico Iamaleava going to UCLA, obviously, over the weekend, and Tennessee picking up former Appalachian State quarterback, but now UCLA quarterback. He went there in the winter. Joey Aguilar now transferring to Tennessee. He appears to be the guy that the Vols are going to go with, Jerry. What do you have, 6,000 yards total passing in his tenure at Appalachian State? So they get a very productive quarterback, Tennessee does. I wonder if they got the better end of that deal at some level. May have, given the way Iamaleava left town.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. Do they like Jake Merklinger? I mean, is this going to be Aguilar's job, or is he just going in and competing for the job? I guess, look, so we have a Tennessee/Texas fan in there. He might know that better than I did. So we'll see.
I will say this. I was told Merklinger did not give the warm fuzzies in their spring game.
I don't think you go to the portal if you have your answer. Yeah, I don't think you go to the portal if you have your answer, right, Bobby? I mean, that's the issue. By the way, I think the bigger news today is Nico's brother hits the portal. right after his true freshman spring at Arkansas.
3 months in. 3 months in. Portal.
Nah. He's got a couple more left, too, you figure.
Yeah. What do you think he was going to go in and beat Taylon Green right out the gate? I don't know what to say. All right, let's talk a little Longhorn football here. Kenneth Cassidy, Bobby and Jerry, there are no guarantees on the return of Cedric Baxter and Christian Clark. Gibson had fumble issues, and Simon is a freshman. Should we take one more running back? While there's no guarantee on anybody, by the way, I want to say that Christian Clark is back. He tore an Achilles. He's very unlikely to tear the Achilles. Now, he may hurt a knee or something like that going forward, but he's back, Kenneth. So I'm not real worried about that. Baxter's a little bit different. He's still getting ready. But I don't think Texas is going to take a running back. And I really don't think they're going to take a running back, nor do I think they should take a running back at this point. Unless there's a world beater. Unless Keyshawn Judkins or somebody that caliber is available in the portal and wants to go to Texas. But I don't see a first round running back going in the portal right now.
No, and I don't see that guy picking Texas either. I mean, I just don't. I mean, Texas, look, even if that guy showed up in the portal, Texas has a 1,000-yard rusher back, and Cedric Baxter's coming back, and there's young talent at Texas. It's not like he'd be going into a running back situation where he's going to be the starter, the 1A, or even be splitting carries. Cedric Baxter's going to play when he gets back. I mean, there's no doubt. James Simons had a really good spring. I think that, again, I think Christian Clark's return earlier than expected, and Simon's spring, how impressive he's been, is why Sark pretty much said we're good at running back. They feel really good about the depth of their room. And I think Jarrett Gibson obviously makes a jump in year two. All guys do. How big of a jump? I think all this will play out on the field with these guys. But Jarrett Gibson will be a better player in year two than year one. It's a natural progression for these guys too.
Corey Cochran with a question. Good afternoon. Any new info on CJ Baxter or DJ Moore? DeAndre Moore, maybe?
Yeah, DeAndre Moore has been lightly practicing a little bit. He made his return a little early. He got his toe surgery taken care of. They did not want it to linger through spring, re-injure it, make it worse in the spring. So we got that taken care of and returned, I think, a little bit to the practice field April 12th. CJ Baxter a few games in next year, Bobby.
Baxter is hoping to be ready by the first game, but that's touch and go at best. He is a little bit ahead of schedule, though. I would say that based on what we've heard. He is rehabbing really, really nicely, but still a little bit to go there, Corey. That's the best we have for you on those two as of right now. Jay Dobbs, Bobby, Jerry, have you heard of a case of a player transferring, favoring Texas, Florida, or Tennessee because of no state income tax in those states? I haven't heard of that in portal transfer, but I absolutely heard Justice Terry say that from a Georgia perspective, a state of Georgia perspective. No state income tax in Texas on his NIL compared to the state of Georgia. I think Georgia subsequently changed that law because they didn't want to hear about that. But my point being, I haven't heard anything about it in the transfer portal, but I have in the high school recruiting. Jerry, anything there for you?
No, same. I'm sure it's come up. I'm sure those states use it in portal discussions with agents and players and such, but I haven't heard it specifically. I really think the level of money these guys are making, that takes care of itself. It's the fit. It's really fit development for these guys. But if you can find all that in one of those states, I do think it helps. Yeah.
All right, you're listening to Talkin' Ball with Jerry Hamilton. I'm Bobby Burton. Special thanks to our sponsor, Dr. Brett Robin of the Austin Orthopedic Institute as well. Jerry, this one from E. Kim. Does Texas under Steve Sarkisian even take a prospect like Byron Murphy these days? A DT that is undersized out of high school. I mean,
No, and that's
Yeah,
kind of the slippery
unlikely.
slope. That's the slippery slope. I mean, look, Byron Murphy. Um, when I saw him his senior year was 6'1", 275, 280. I would say the answer is no right now, and that's a slippery slope. I think you can get and look, they're recruiting at a very high level. I'm not saying they're not. Nobody's perfect, but if you put some of these guys in a box, I mean, let's see if any of these guys that are bigger frame guys end up being as good a player as Byron Murphy in 3 years.
First round draft pick. This one from Manuel B. Manuel, thank you for the super chat, man. That's nice of you. Recruiting question. How do commitments work if an offered recruit wants to jump in the class, but they are at the bottom of the UT board? Does the coaching staff have to tell them to hold off, or do they take the commitment? That's a really good question because the answer, Manuel, is nuanced. Is the best way to put it. You agree with that, Jerry? Explain. Say I'm a wide receiver, and I've been offered by the University of Texas right now, but there's Jaylen Lott out there. You mentioned some others, Jerry, Jabari Mack, etc. Say I'm just one of those guys that got offered like 6 months ago, and Texas clearly hasn't really been pushing me to commit. I decide to call in and commit. What happens? What may or may not happen there? They can decide to take my commitment.
Yeah.
Or they can say, you know what? We want to see you a couple more times. Or I don't think this is necessarily the right time to do it. How would Texas or any team, because Texas is no different than anybody else, other than the fact that Texas gets the choice a little bit more than other teams right now. How does that play?
Yeah, so I think there's some they're just really upfront with the kid. Hey, you're our number 3 strong side linebacker on the board or whatever position, and we're going to bring you in this spring for an unofficial. We're going to watch you in the spring, and we have an official visit in June for you. But we're going to let this process play out a little bit. So there's that. And then if a kid says, I'm done with you, then so be it. There's a lot of really good players out there. I think that's the best way to go nowadays because, look, if you're let's just say you're the number 3 or 4 player at a position, and you tell the kid that and he balks and walks away, number 5 is not going to be far behind number 4, right? It's like you're 1 and 2 guys. That's a little different game, but you're not going to tell them that. But beyond that, there's a lot of really good players in that box from 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the position board around the country if you're a national recruiting program. So, but then the other part of that is, but like you say, hey, we want to come watch you in the spring. Let us get through the spring. Let us get through this portal, see what we're looking like. I mean, there's a lot. It's nuance. It's like you say, Bobby, these guys have to be really good at their, I call it game, but let's just say their communication and explanation. Yeah. And a lot of times it's as much to the people around the kid as the kid.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's just straight up. You have to. I mean, Sark does a pretty good job of being honest with guys. So you have to say, hey, look, I mean, I'm waiting on somebody else, or we need to figure this out, or you need to come visit. We need to talk about this more directly, et cetera. Jerry, to your point, thanks, Taylor, for your super chat as well. Nico's brother just signed with UCLA. That's Madden Iamaleava, who had signed with Arkansas back in December as a midterm enrollee. So now both brothers at UCLA. That's good for the Iamaleava family. Aloha travel. Aloha.
It's really bad for UCLA if they both hit the portal after this year.
Oh, let me read this, please. Yeah. Aloha. What? Jerry has to go somewhere? Aloha, fellas. This team is starting to make me have delusions of grandeur. What are the weak points in the program right now? Maybe an unproven OL in spots, perhaps a lack of game breakers on offense. In my opinion, Texas may be the most talented overall team. Man, what are the weak points in this program right now? We talked a little bit about this on Coffee and Football this morning, Jerry, and last night. Return game, maybe at this point. We think the punting game has been fixed, the kicking game. Maybe the first string offensive line is unproven. Jerry pointed out last night the backup quarterback hasn't played a snap. I mean, the bottom line is we're stretching.
Yeah.
I mean, that tells you how good, to your point, Aloha Traveler, if we're starting to talk about the backup quarterback being a potential question mark and that being maybe a weak point or an unproven point, that's stretching it a little bit, I would say.
Yeah. Oh, I had to get up, Bob. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a very talented team. I would say, so I kind of leaned into injury a little bit. Colton Vosick, somebody asked about him earlier, being out this spring, does leave with Trey Moore working at linebacker, which he can obviously spin back the end at any time. He's a very cerebral football instinctive guy. But Zena misses some time this spring with a thumb injury. So is depth at edge actually a little bit, because, Colton Vosick hasn't had a healthy season at Texas. So if he goes down, you're going true freshman. Now, Colin Simmons pretty much said Lance Jackson's going to be a 3-year player and gone. So, and Justice Terry's worked out there as well. So the talent's there. They could just be a little freshmanish out there if there's an injury. If Colton Vosick continues to be injured, doesn't come back on time, for the season. So that could be one. Bobby, I had to go get somebody asked. So Chris Bennett, I like to try to deliver. $50 super chat. Does Jerry or Bobby put on a helmet? Unlike Rod Babers, I don't have a helmet, so I'll just put on a lampshade. How's that work?
Jerry.
You want to come party?
John Rice. Excited about the running back room, but haven't heard much about Baxter. Should we be concerned? John, we covered this briefly. I'm not concerned unduly. I absolutely think that there should be some reticence naturally, because the injury he had, we actually talked about this with Dr. Brett Robin on this show about 3 or 4 months ago about this injury. It wasn't just the ACL. It was the LCL, the PCL, the MCL. Yeah. I mean, he hurt his knee, like seriously. Yeah. So it is a big time rehab. The question is whether or not he's going to come back with the same punch that he had. And John, that's my concern. Not that his rehab isn't going well, not that he's not going to eventually make it back. My question is he going to make it back and end up being as good or better than what he was? There are certain people that go through these things. Priest Holmes, what, do you have 2 or 3 knee ACLs? Every time he came back better. So, John, my point to everybody out there, and I hope the best for Cedric, obviously, is, it's almost trust but verify, right? It's hope for the best, but we got to see. I mean, no doctor is even going to be able to tell you right now. No, is my opinion. I mean, until he gets out there and starts testing it when the time comes, I think we're going to be tough.
I would say this too. I said this on one of the shows. I can't remember where, but when I was in town, was it April 12th for the recruiting day? By the way, he was the first guy in for practice that I saw, and he wasn't practicing. So that's just always about Set Baxter and why the staff loves the guy. But his leg, most of the atrophy was gone, and it was almost the same size as his healthy leg. And I took that as really, really good news for him. That when I watched him walk in, because I saw him out of the corner of my eye. So then I kind of watched him walk in just to kind of look at his legs, see where they were, because he obviously was wearing shorts. And that the leg that he had his knee operated on, it's almost back to the same size as his 100% healthy leg. And I took that as a good sign for him because his strength is building back there. Hamstrings, calves, they were returning to the size of his other leg, which, if you see that atrophy last longer, they have a longer physically to go. So I'm not Dr. Brett Robin. I'm just saying what I observed. But I think Bobby is important as anything with this. I remember Willis McGahee. Remember his terrible knee injury in the national championship game. He said the biggest hurdle he had to overcome was the next time he got hit on the side of his knee. He got tackled and somebody hit him on the side of his knee. Once you get past that, then I think that's where you make your biggest gains. Physically, it'll come back. I think in time, but mentally, that first hit, you got to start working through that again because, man, a 6'1.5", 6'2" running back, some knees and legs are going to get hit a lot.
Jerry, I had to send you something that I need to know whether or not to talk about.
Yeah, you can bring it up.
I can. Okay. All right. Let's go there. Brett, where is that? I can't find it now in the chat.
I think I started.
Okay, you did. Let me look at it, buddy. There it is. This might be, Brett says this might sound crazy, but I just DM'd the France guy that Texas is pursuing. This is and he leaked to me all the details. Can I share? What?
I'm not sure I believe Brett on that. If you do, you need to share. But Texas is talking to him. Yes, Florida and Texas are really good player from France. Is he the guy that I've been mentioning most that I'm not revealing yet? No, but this kid's a really good player. I think he's going to have plenty of options, and we'll see if Texas gets serious and is one of those. But Texas has been talking to him, yes, and he's very good.
Rob Enfield, how much? Thank you for the super chat, Rob. How much more NIL money does Texas have compared to OU? So I don't know the exact numbers because the numbers aren't public, but I think Texas certainly has more than OU and at least participated that way last year for sure. The thing that OU is trying to do now is operate within the House settlement and maybe have a couple of outliers. I think that Texas, meanwhile, is being ultra aggressive right now, while the House settlement is still unsettled, frankly. And there's a way to get going on this. Rob, I don't know I'd be lying to you, buddy, if I told you, this was the exact number or something like this. Jerry, here's one for you real quick. Eddie Kane, how are Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma holding up at defensive tackle this spring?
All I've pretty much heard is Texas really likes those guys long term and where they'll go as players. Likes their talent, loves the frames and where they can go. As far as what the expectation is this season for those guys, too early for me. I haven't heard anything there. I do think we'll see at least one of those guys get on the field a little bit though. And I want to follow up with James Richards asked, our resident Georgia fan, how's Justice Terry looking for playing time? I'm hearing he will play. He was out a little bit early in spring with a hamstring, but is doing very well, playing more at that 5 tech end position, though, until he gets his weight up into the 290s. He came in at like 257. He's like 272, 274 right now.
Catch the Wave X, former UT player that Emmett Mosley, the transfer for Stanford, compares to the most. The
simple answer is Jordan Whittington.
He's bigger than that.
He's bigger. He's taller kid though, but the way he plays, maybe play
but
style.
The length. Now he has catch radius that Jordan. It's not so much. Colin Johnson, big faster. He's an outside guy, Jerry. He's faster than Colin. Not as tall.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, he's got great hands. Colin had great hands.
I need to think about that a little bit.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a fair question. I've watched his highlight tape, in fairness, Catch the Wave, but I haven't, I don't know for sure if he's who he reminds me of quite yet.
How's he compared to Sloan Thomas?
Practice in the fall.
How's he compared to Sloan Thomas?
Ooh, maybe
he's not a body catcher like Sloan was.
Yeah, bigger than Sloan.
Very similar size. Very similar.
Little bit bigger apparently. 6'2"ish, 6'1.5". I don't know. That's a good question. Hey, I think it's a good question. Something for us to think about this offseason. All right, we're going to get to more of y'all's questions tonight, but we want to take a little break here as I take a sip of my hot chocolate. Thank you to my beautiful wife.
Hot chocolate.
Yes. Special thanks to our sponsor for this show, Dr. Brett Robin at Austin Orthopedic Institute. Jenny, you've got me going with this hot time. For sponsoring On Texas Football, Dr. Robin, a former Longhorn running back, knows what it takes to stay in the game, and he's here for athletes of all ages, specializing in musculoskeletal health. Dr. Robin treats joint pain and injuries with a conservative approach first, but also offers advanced surgical options, including arthroscopic procedures, fracture management, and total joint replacements. If you need an appointment in Georgetown, Austin, Killeen, convenient offices there, Dr. Robin is accepting new patients now. If you're looking for a top-notch orthopedic, give Dr. Robin a call, 512-856-1000. Get back to your active lifestyle and doing what you love, and get an appointment with Dr. Brett Robin, former Longhorn football player, 512-856-1000. All right, a couple more questions here as we keep going and going through everything. UT Horns, SEC. Did Ryan Wingo have LASIK on both eyes? I think he had it just on, now I could be wrong. I think he had LASIK on one eye, and then they had another procedure on the other eye that dealt with a scratch.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was on both eyes. I can double check. Not sure on that. But anyways. Thomas Quinn asks, any idea who we were targeting at wide receiver? If it's the transfer portal, I don't think there's another wide receiver yet that's in the portal that Texas is interested in. I know people have pontificated that the BYU wide receiver would be a guy, but to my knowledge, Texas had not reached out to him as of Saturday. Anybody, Jerry, you haven't heard of any other wide receivers other than what we went over in the high school ranks, right?
Yeah, I have not to this point.
Okay. Arrow Kits 27. Is there any such thing as under the table payments now? That's what our point is. Everything's above board. Why would you make it under the table when you can make everything free and legal? That's a much better, cleaner way of capitalism, in my opinion. You know?
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Now, where's it going? Well, that's a discussion we'll have to talk about after all this house settlement and everything.
Yeah. Tennessee Longhorn, would Texas opt out of the $20.5 million cap for current structure? No, they would not.
Okay.
There's no chance. They're gonna play by the rules, and everybody in the SEC will, everybody in the Big Ten will, and then we'll go from there. What's going to end up happening is, look, Texas made $324 million, I think, or $330 million from its athletic revenue last year. That is less than 10% for these student athletes. Now, you can add another 10 million in for scholarships and everything else and get to 30 million for a full 10% of their revenue. But the NFL, for example, does 50%. So I don't think 20.5 is going to last very long.
Right.
There's look-ins every week or every year. So that's one other. UT at Horns, SEC had, who's Jaylen Lott's player comparison, Jerry?
Dang.
Is it DeCorian Moore? Somebody like that? Ryan Williams? Is he that? Is he that kind of 0 to 60? Pretty close. Gotcha.
Bigger frame, though.
Yeah.
Bigger frame. I need to think about that a little bit. Bigger frame. I don't know.
Right. Fair enough. Lock and Horns. Thanks for the super chat.
That's a great question.
What are your biggest development keys you're looking for in Arch Manning's progression?
I'll start here. So I think there's two things that are kind of sewn into one for any young quarterback, but especially guys who are aggressive down the field, is deep late and late middle. He'll throw a couple of picks deep late or late middle. He's already done that a little bit last year, but he's an aggressive guy down the field. He wants to throw the ball down the field. Sark wants to throw the ball down the field. And when you're very aggressive and very confident in your ability to do so, deep late and late middle, there's some learning curve with that. And I think once he gets past that learning curve, that's kind of the two things thrown into one that I'm really watching with him this year.
Development keys for me: ball out on time on a regular basis. Like, is he? That's a key thing for any first year starter. The game can be too fast the first game out, for example. You got to get that. You got to be ready. So that's first. The second piece is just learning to dump it down. Jerry's talking about deep middle and late middle. He's right. But the way to counteract that is to dump the ball down.
Yeah.
Take the check down. And if Arch does that while still being strategically opportunistic downfield, you're going to have a hell of a quarterback. That's what that's going to matter. All right, last one for tonight, guys. Brett, another basketball question. Evan Baudiseur and Wilcher, what's the latest on them, Jerry? Brett may be our basketball guy here.
Well, he came back to Evan, the French guard, so we already got that one out of the way. Wilcher, I'm monitoring.
Okay, gotcha. Fair enough. All right, I think. Oh, wait a minute. A couple other questions here. What's been y'all's proudest moment y'all had covering a recruit, non-Texas related and Texas related? This from Justin Yarbrough. Proudest moment y'all had covering a recruit, non-Texas related? I tell you what, mine might have been. Back in the day, I was head of the Rivals rankings. Jerry knows this, and Jerry was part of that as well. And I had stepped out on a limb and said Vince Young was a quarterback, and I rated Reggie McNeil as an athlete.
Yeah.
And at the state quarterfinals or round of 16 or something like that, Vince Young went out there and had one of those games that was just freaky. And I was like, I got it right.
Yeah.
That for me, Justin, that was a very proud moment. I rated Peyton Manning #1 in the country back in the day. That was a proud moment, especially when other people had other guys rated higher than him. I've had quite a few Texas and non-Texas related. What about you, Jerry?
You know, that's a great question. I wasn't part of. I've only been part of national basketball rankings like 2 times over my years, but Russ Springman sent me to go to see Kevin Durant when he was 16 in New Orleans in AAU tournament. He's like, I was talking to Russ. He's like, I'm recruiting this guy from my area. He was like 6'4" a couple of years ago. He's almost 6'8" now, and we have a legitimate shot at him. And I was like, no way. He's like, I'm just telling you. And Russ was like, tell me if you think he's the best player in the country. And I went and watched him. And obviously Greg Oden was the big name then. And I watched the guy, and I remember what I told guys. I said, that's the best 6'8" or taller shooter and scorer I've ever seen the Larry Bird at the time. And I didn't see Larry in high school, obviously just watching basketball. I was like, I've never seen anything like this guy. And I was like, there was literally no way Greg Oden was going to be better than Kevin Durant at all. So that was mine, because I told anybody that would listen, I was like, that's the best basketball player in America. I know Greg Oden's a center. I know he's ranked here, blah, blah, blah. But there's zero chance that guy's going to be better than Kevin Durant. Now, I didn't know Greg Oden had one leg longer than the other, so microfracture was going to hurt his career. But I don't think he loved the game like KD loved the game. But when first time I saw KD, I was like, you can't show me a better player than this guy at 16 years old. Like, not in that class, literally no chance. Non-Texas, I'll tell you, the best athlete I've ever seen in high school was LeBron James. He played and it's weird now. He's playing football at the time too. And Tom Lemming, I remember Tom Lemming talking about him in football. And I'd heard of him. I went to see, he played in the AAU tournament in Clear Lake. So both of them just have me basketball. To this day, he's the best athlete I've ever seen at that age. Like, it's just like nothing you could compare that guy to as an athlete. It's totally
big
and totally free.
Big and powerful.
Like Adrian Peterson was at running back, or Vince was, Vince is still the best college football player I've ever seen. I'm interested to see if I see a better college football player than Vince, but LeBron James, pound for pound, is the best athlete I've ever seen in high school. Not even close.
All right. This one from Rich Money Cash. Will scholarship limits and denying in-conference transfers hurt the SEC? Scholarship limits will not. That's just going to force more. 85 is enough for scholarships. As long as they have rosters up to 105, they'll have enough room for walk-ons. The question I have, will in-conference transfers hurt the SEC? Jerry, your thoughts on that? Like Texas couldn't take the Vanderbilt defensive tackle that was a starter.
And nobody else could. I do think it hurts a little bit, yeah. I mean, you're pushing some talent out of your conference through your own rule. So, yeah, I think it hurts you a little bit. Does it hurt you your quest to win a national championship or getting 5 teams in the playoffs when it goes to 16? No. Does it cost you 3, 4, 5 really talented players in the spring portal window? Yeah. So are you lessening your talent level by 4 or 5 players who are possible draft picks? You are. I would say it hurts a little.
What if there's no, like, when all this comes to pass, the House settlement, one of the things I hear that they're going to do is they're going to do away with the spring portal.
They should.
If they do away with the spring portal, then it's irrelevant. That rule is irrelevant,
right? For
football, at least. For football.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it. Thanks again to our sponsor, Dr. Brett Robin of Austin Orthopedic Institute. If you're looking for an appointment and an orthopedic in Austin, make sure you give Dr. Robin a shout. His phone number, again, is 512-856-1000. That's 512-856-1000. Thank you also to our esteemed producer, Matthew Hutchison, behind the Jabberwocky behind the scenes there, as well as Jerry Hamilton. I'm Bobby Burton. Guys, thanks for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow morning. Jerry's putting the lampshade back on.
I don't have a Rob helmet here. I don't have a helmet for the $50 super chat.
Thank y'all, guys. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow morning. Thanks for hanging out with us.